Good afternoon. Welcome and thank you for joining us with Family Network on Disabilities, Family Star Program. Today, we will talk a little bit more about our webinar series for dads. We'll talk about one of a few different options that we have and different talks that we've been having for fathers of children who have disabilities. Let's talk about it. Services and resources for dads. We want you to understand that navigating the process of special education and all of those related services concerning your family as you would have it, it doesn't have to be difficult. So with the Family Star Program, which stands for Support, Training, Assistance, and Resources, we are the Family to Family Health Information Center of Florida, right under the Family Network of Disabilities umbrella. We support families of children and youth with special health care needs and professionals as well. We help families to be more effective partners in the healthcare decisions that they would be making for their families on all different levels. So today we are going to be talking about bridging the gap, bridging the gap. And with that, we wanted to make sure that we brought these resources to you in a way that made you feel comfortable as far as coming to us should you need more information about any of those aspects of fathering and parenting a child that has a disability or other special need or any type of a special health care concern that you may have about your loved one. We want men to know that it is okay. It's okay to talk about your feelings. It's okay to ask for help, to cry even if you need to break down and go to therapy, find out those things that you may not have previously known and get the support that you need. This is what we strive for. This is our mission here with the Family Network on Disabilities, to help you to understand that you need to know it is okay to not be okay. And in this capacity, we like to bring the information to you that can help you in those resource facilities. So we want to talk about today, bridging the gap, where we will discuss reaching rural, minority, and migrant families. If you fall in one of these categories, please reach out to us and let us know how we may be able to assist you with the resources and support for your family. We want to know what factors could increase your outreach. How would you go about factoring in what your community involvement looks like for your family? Well, you know that many people will feel the need to increase their family and community involvement, but they just might not know how. So in this instance, this is why we want to bring that information to you in a way that make you feel comfortable in understanding how to go about bringing those initiatives to the forefront for your family and giving you the education and the resources that you would need to be able to facilitate that for your families. So this is one of the ways that we want to help you with those resources. Today, within Bridging the Gap, we're going to talk about outreach and involvement, what types of challenges you have in accessing and succeeding in your community. Also, we'll talk a little bit about cultural diversity, where all cultures are different and unique. And finally, add in some tips and strategies and show that the best outcomes occur when all parties are active participants in those activities. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Today, you are here for Bridging the Gap, reaching rural, minority, and migrant families. We want to say again, thank you and welcome. Thank you for joining us here today to find out a little bit more information about some topics which could help your family. We here at the Family Network on Disabilities are family-driven and family-centered. We are a nonprofit 501c3 here for the state of Florida. And one of the things that makes us unique is that the information that we bring to you can be deemed as shared experience, learned experience. We give of ourselves and the education that and resources that we help our families for, because not only do we walk the walk, we are able to talk the talk because we have those experiences in hand. This is one of the reasons that it makes us such a unique company. We are definitely a family network on disabilities. Now, before we get started, we like to make one very, very important clarification. We do not act as attorneys or doctors or even mental health professionals in that sense. However, what we do is to provide information and resources and supports for your families, helping you to be informed parents with those items of interest that you may have, help you and give you the support that you may need so that you can make informed decisions for your family. So again, we want to say thank you and welcome from all three of our regional PTIs. You see at the very bottom of the screen, as well as the Family Star program for our families who have children with complex medical needs. Thank you and welcome. So today's workshop, we will talk about bridging the gap between family involvement and educational personnel outreach. So you see right here, you see a bridge. This bridge definitely has a gap. So there's a gap between families' involvement and what they may be able to do, and also that educational personnel as far as what their outreach looks like. So let's talk about cultural diversity. All cultures are different and unique in their own respects. Cultural diversity is the quality of diverse, which also means different cultures as opposed to a monoculture, meaning one, the global monoculture, or a homogenization of cultures akin to cultural decay. This phrase, cultural diversity, can also refer to cultural respect in each other's differences. There's a lot of different factors that could go into that. The background, different roots, their upbringing, values that you may have within certain cultures. Also, their needs and concerns. What does their involvement play in how you actively participate within your community? Well, there's a lot of different ways to be an active participant. We'll talk about a couple of these different aspects as enumerated here on your screen. Being open and honest in exchange of both problems and solutions. Conversations work better when they are two-sided. If one person listens, then the other person is able to speak effectively, and vice versa. You want to have continued involvement as well. Keep that conversation going beyond what the first initial contact would be. Also, and having initiation by either side, either party, of continued communication as needed. Remember, we want to facilitate those conversations that are on a continuum. You also want to ask questions. Ask questions, as many as you would deem necessary, to be certain that a concept is understood. And this is one great way to facilitate involvement by being an active participant. Involvement sounds easier than it actually is. Sometimes there are different barriers that would prevent you from being as involved as you may want to be. A couple of these different ideas are expanded right here on your screen. You see school policies as they would relate to your school-age children, state statutes as well, procedures, sunshine states, procedures and standards, as well as a chain of command, and federal regulations are all different ways of understanding where you fit in that continuum and how involved you may be able to insert yourself into those different types of aspects where you feel you may need a voice, but not really fully understand where you fit in that timeline. So that brings us to outreach. Now, a textbook dictionary definition of outreach would be defined as a systematic attempt to provide services beyond conventional limits as to particular segments of a community, and also just what it says. It's a compound word with two words, outreach, meaning to reach out, to extend. The photo that you see right here has a hand extended. That is what we mean by outreach. And thinking of how outreach could facilitate understanding more about your surroundings, it can sometimes be difficult. But why is outreach sometimes so hard? Why is it so difficult to reach those certain populations? Well, there's a couple of different ways that you want to see here. Number 1 through 4 here on your screen will outline some of the reasons why outreach may be difficult with certain populations. Well, number 1 is closed communities. A closed community intentionally limits links with outsiders and outside communities. Closed communities may be of different types. They may be religious types, ethnic types, or even political in nature. Now, the opposite of a closed community would be an open community, and that maintains social relations with external communities as well. So if you think of what a closed community looks like, thinking of in terms of where the gatekeepers are. Closed communities keep unto themselves. Open communities invite those other people into those communities, other people, other thoughts of thinking, other ideas, all of those different things may make outreach difficult in certain instances. You see, number 2, being a lack of voluntary participation as well. Also, there can be a lack of personal communication, being able to speak up or have your voice heard or know how to facilitate those conversations with people that you may feel are not either active listeners or may not be effective in listening for the things that you are trying to communicate. Number 4, you also see being agreeable but not engaged. You might listen and hear information that works for you. However, you do not participate in the conversation itself. So all of these different ways are different types of aspects that you may want to consider when you are thinking of outreach and why sometimes it can be so difficult. There are also other issues and factors as to why outreach may seem difficult. And we'll enumerate a little bit on these a little farther as we go along into the webinar. There's trust, authority, family, language barriers, also being welcoming, and mutual respect. So we'll expand on each one of these bullet points and give you a few tips and solutions as to how you may be able to resolve these as we continue with today's webinar. The first being trust. Now with trust, you want to think in terms of what your past experiences have been within those trust factors. Have you received promises that were unkept? Those empty promises that make you keep in the back of your mind that maybe I should not trust this person or this situation or things to work out in my favor. You may also have distrust with government employees or even service providers because of decisions that have been made on your behalf, or not understanding exactly what those outcomes may look like. And you also may have trust issues due to privacy and not wanting information about yourself or your loved one or your family or any of those cultural values that you may have to be known. All of these different types of things can affect what outreach looks like for your family. With outreach and involvement, here are a few tips and strategies that you can think of to help within that trust factor. So with outreach, you want to think of being able to follow through with your intentions and emphasize what they are. And taking involvement, you also want to be able to take a chance in that respect and look for intention. But in both cases, you want to watch what your body language looks like and how courteous and respectful you are, and invite in a trusted third party if you feel that you may need someone else to speak on a neutral stance on your behalf. But above all, be honest. That's a way to build trust. The next bullet point was about authority. Now, with authority, you may have questioning for those in authoritative roles, or also on any level of authority. You may have issues with those in authority having higher levels of education and feel that maybe you are not adding in useful contribution to this certain type of involvement, or not have self-confidence to feel that you are participating effectively within those different realms of involvement. Now, here are a few tips and strategies you want to think about for your outreach and involvement if authority is a factor or an issue for you or your family. With your outreach, reaching out to those people who may be able to help you, ask questions. Ask if there are things that you may not understand, and give the details and choices, and be open to different types of options, but not in a sense where you are lecturing the person that you are reaching out to. Also, you may be able to assure family members of their role and how important those roles would be within that family unit. Now, your involvement may look like this. Raise your hand if you are in a group. If you're in a virtual sense, there should generally be a button that you can raise your hand to have your voices heard, or to voice those concerns in a virtual sense, to type in a chat or a chat box that is open for you. Also, be prepared. Discuss those questions that you may have in advance, and write them down if you would need to have those at your ready. Look for intentions. Find an opening to be able to insert the questions that you may need or have more clarification on. And keep in mind that it is your expertise that you are bringing concerning your family and your loved one who has a disability in helping with that involvement factor. So all of these different tips and strategies are great ways to understand how to engage with those authority figures. The next bullet point would be family. Family. We love our families. This is another way that we may have a factor in those issues and factors may be added in that we may not feel that we could be as involved. But we want to keep in mind what your entire family structure looks like. Are you having invitations for a certain section of your family and not for others? How do you make decisions about your families? And also, in certain cultures, who is the head of the family? Is it the matriarch? Is it the patriarch? Is it an older individual? Or is it the sandwich generation, which may be right between those older individuals and the younger ones that we care for? Who is the head of the family? What does that family structure entail, and how does that look like? Let's see how this could be an issue and a factor when you are discussing outreach for your family. Here are a few tips and strategies to consider when you are thinking of what bridging the gap for your loved one looks like. You also want to think in terms of your outreach, what those needs are that you would have, and invite your extended family, but not being pressed for certain types of decisions. You want to offer time to discuss all of those decisions, and then if needed be, offer private time as well, and then leave the room. As far as your involvement, we want you to be active. Remember, active participation facilitates great conversations. You want to give your input. Don't assume anything. Ask, speak up if you are unsure about any of those tasks or any of those issues, factors that may be brought up. If you don't understand something or you don't know the answer to something, you can always say, we'll discuss and get back to you. Or maybe we have a moment to discuss this further. This will all facilitate in your involvement, helping to facilitate your understanding, and make sure that you have inserted yourself into those conversations that would only help to give you more information, more clarity, and help you to be in the know when it comes to those options and things that you may need for your loved one with disability. The next issue you may see from our bullet point list is language. Has language been a barrier for you? Do you speak a different language other than the one where your information is coming from? Are you bilingual? What are the preferences for your family? Do you have a certain dialect that you speak within that language that your primary information is coming from? You also want to think what English looks like in culturally diverse communities. Is that English sounding different from the way that the English is written in those periodicals that you read, or the information that you may receive on a brochure or even see on a website? Heritage and culture all have a important component in this type of in this realm. So you want to be respectful of those languages that are spoken, those languages that are understood, and the language in which you will understand how to communicate with those people in authority so that you can facilitate that outreach. Here are a few tips and strategies that you want to think about as far as language barriers when speaking with those authority figures or inserting yourself into those outreach measures. Let's think of first in terms of outreach. Offer an interpreter if needed, and materials in your native language. Also, you want to, if you are using an interpreter, you want to utilize interpreters that are knowledgeable. Avoid using children. Sometimes adults have information that they say that might not resonate with children. They may speak the language, but they might not understand things that adults have to convey in an adult sense. So you may want to avoid using children, but at any rate, speak clearly, speak simply, say what you mean without an abundance of flowery words, and avoid using slang or avoid using acronyms. Or if you do use acronyms, explain what they mean. If I was to say FND, FND all the time, you never would know what FND stands for. But if I say we are FND stands for Family Network on Disabilities, that makes it a little bit more plain. So you want to avoid asking as well if you understand, but more so give the person a chance to ask for questions if they would need, or alienate them by asking, do you understand? Or for Spanish, give a generalized sense of the word. Sometimes generalizations may be a little bit better than if you're using literal conversation aspects that don't translate well to another language. Now, as well as your involvement, you want to see the same, some of these same offerings for outreach, such as asking for an interpreter, a knowledgeable interpreter that may be available in your native language, and explaining the difficulty with interpretation for those phrases that just might not have they might not have a component in that alternative language. You also want to ask for an adult and continue to insert yourself with questions and a clarification where you would need it. Take notes if you need. And also recognize what the person's intention is when you're speaking with them, and explain if you are having any difficulty with that interpretation. You also want to think about welcome from the issues of factors list that we showed before. If you're uncertain of what that invitation looks like, or your invitation or welcome, is uncertain with the authority of the person who is inviting you, because of past experiences that you may have had, or feel that you are at risk of rejection because of this, which seems to be warm and inviting, but you may not feel warm and inviting because of that invitation, because of all of those different types of the bullet points that you see here, and past experiences being at the forefront of your mind when receiving a certain invitation. Let's think of ways, these alternate tips and strategies for outreach and involvement that you may want to consider when you are being invited for, whether it be any type of group setting or even a one-on-one. Let's talk about outreach first. You can include diverse graphics and different materials and avoid those negative comments you have. Provide childcare if needed for those individuals who may not have someone to watch their little ones or their loved ones with a disability. But at any time, you also want to be welcoming and respectful, even provide a meal or snacks if this is warranted for the space that you're in. For involvement, we want to think in terms of measuring the importance of the invitation, measuring the importance to your child, or even pull the person aside if you need be, and explain what your perception of this certain type of invitation may be. But in all ways, be open and respectful. Even asking about childcare or suggesting a potluck. These are all different ways to be warm and inviting and respectful of a person's time and understanding what their intentions would be in each one of those respectful places. And there's that word that we just say so many times, respect. You want to be respectful of a person's time and their intentions. All families should feel that their own culture is respected and celebrated. And with that, if you are unsure or unfamiliar with a family's culture, ask questions. There's a great way to understand if you ask a question. You'll never know if you never step up to ask those things that you may be uncertain about. It's better to hear from the person themselves than to make assumptions and then lose that respect factor in return. So if you're unsure or unfamiliar with a family's culture, by all means, ask a question, but also be respectful within that asking. You want to have a mutual understanding. It's okay to not agree with everything that you have heard, but in all cases, be respectful. It's acceptable to ask questions and make sure that you maintain clarity with the subject at hand. There are no wrong questions. But we do not want to assume that we know what the answer or question will be coming from your other party. You want to reach out as human and understand that these partnerships will only serve to benefit your child, especially if you're in a situation where you're working with a school or either a community partner or fellowship where your child will have an integral part of that community. We want to remember that this partnership will benefit your child. And it's great for us to be respectful and understand where our culture will be able to flourish and have those communities open. We want those partnerships to benefit our loved ones, and especially for those of our loved ones who have disabilities. Making sure that we foster positive partnerships is the key in these instances. We want to bridge the gap. The best outcomes are achieved when families are involved, when communication is collaborative and all parties actively participate. We want to help you to facilitate those instances where you may need a hand up. You may need someone to help you with those ideas that you may not understand fully how to convey. And that's what we intend to do here with the Family Network on Disabilities, helping you to be the informed parent that you would need in any of those instances. We want to help you to build that trust. Building the gap, bridging the gap will help with trust. It will take mutual understanding. It will take respect. In either of those instances, without the trust factor at the beginning and helping to understand what each party needs mutually, there can be no respect factor. We want to make sure that all of these three aspects are in mutual unison: trust, mutual understanding, and respect. And in this way, you can help bridge those gaps between family, community involvement, partnering with professionals in schools and all of those other organizations with which your loved one with disability will have their best and brightest outcomes. So with that, we want to say thank you for joining us here today for Bridging the Gap. with Family Network on Disabilities on behalf of all three of our regional PTI, which stands for Parent Training and Information regional programs, and also the Family Star program, our medical component for families who have children with complex medical needs. We invite you to visit our website at www.fndusa.org, and also with Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on all of our social media channels. Thank you. And if you would need more information, you can contact us at 1-800-825-5736. Again, that number is 1-800-825-5736. Thank you so much again for joining us today for Bridging the Gap. Should you need any further assistance, please do not hesitate to call us. We can be reached at the number that we gave you previously, and also by email, or contact us through our website at www.fndusa.org. My name is Latasha Berg. I've been your facilitator today. Thank you so much for giving us a minute to talk about it. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.